Welcome to More Than a Refresh, a podcast about data and the people who wrangle it. Our guest today is Jeff Maines, CEO at Intelligence Contacts and CEO at Champion Leadership Group. Hey, Jeff, introduce yourself a little.
Hey, JD, it's great to be with you today. And you are correct, CEO of two companies, one that is in the SaaS space, and the other one is working with other B2B SaaS entrepreneurs.
Interesting. So, we have, any podcast, even though it's organic, we have kind of an outline here, and I'm going to kind of jump forward a bit because SaaS, of course, is something of interest to me. My company, Command Prompt, is in the PostgreSQL space. And every software vendor in the world that has a SaaS solution is trying to monopolize Postgres as SaaS now. And I'm kind of wondering, what do you see the benefits to SaaS?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits is really speed to implementation. So in the old days of software, for those that have been around for a little while, it was about rolling out releases, and they may happen once a quarter, twice a year, maybe once a year, sometimes less often than that. But you're really dependent on the client implementing that, and you're supporting a lot of different releases. And with SaaS, it gives us the ability to push out releases very quickly, to react to the market super fast. And everybody is essentially on the same version, so using the same software, even if they're not using all the same features, or maybe if it's configured differently. But it's really speed to market and time to innovation.
It's interesting. And I'm not going to go down this path too much because I think there's some other things we should cover first. Being in the industry that I'm in, what I have found is that what SaaS does is exactly what you say, but there's a caveat to that, in that it increases failure rates. But we can get into that more in a little bit. So first, let's give our listeners a little bit of background. Who are you beyond your name? What's your background?
Sure. Background is I've built 5 companies in not all tech-based, but they've all had a technical component to it. Sold 4 of those and continue to run my SaaS company. And don't really count Champion Leadership Group as one of those 5 yet. They have to hit a certain revenue number before I count that as a start. A real company has done tons and tons of other things. And along the way, I've failed quite a bit. I've failed more times than most people have tried. And so I've learned a lot of those lessons along the way, and able to share that forward.
Actually, I think that's a good point. You and I are both at an age where hopefully the majority of our failures are behind us. Probably not, but hopefully.
Of course.
But as an entrepreneur myself, and when I'm mentoring and speaking with younger entrepreneurs or those who, quote unquote, wish they could do it, one of the things I often remind people is that generally speaking, you're going to fail 5 times before you succeed.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it's something like the first, most startups fail within their first 5 years. And generally speaking, it takes you a few failures to, find that niche where you actually can succeed. I know that was the case with myself.
Sure.
You've got a long history of building companies from scratch. But it sounds like now, like you have the Championship League. Are you now more in a position where you get called in to save companies, or are you still getting into the ground floor and building them up?
Still getting in at the ground floor and building it up. So coming up with ideas and starting companies. Occasionally I have done turnarounds, but that is the exception more than the rule. A lot of times when companies are in the point where they need saving, it's a lot easier just to pull the plug and start over than it is to try and rescue something that is I don't want to say doomed to fail, but in a lot of cases doomed to fail. So,
well, I think one way to put it would be not necessarily that it's doomed to fail, but that it's not productive to make it continue.
That's well said. Yes.
Right. Because in a lot of situations, the environment, maybe it's not even toxic, but it's just a situation where the amount of energy it would take, and whether it be, income investment, people investment, whatever the case may be, there is no true productive result anywhere on the horizon, even if you do start to make money again, right? The damage to the internal infrastructure, the organics, the humanity of the company itself is gone.
Yes, without a doubt. That happens a lot. And it's a sad thing to see, but that is a reality. And sometimes it makes sense to save. And just like you said, a lot of times it doesn't because it's so damaged on the inside. It's better to start over. Or, pivoting is one of those things that is a tough thing. As people say, things are not going well here. Should I pivot and take this and do something else? And a lot of times that doesn't work either, specifically for the reasons you said, is because the damage is done internally already. And it's a really tough thing to pull out of that and change when the culture is not good to start with.
So these companies that you've started, are they all within the same realm? I mean, what's the common denominator with them?
Well, that's interesting because they've been in different industries for the most part. And the thing that has really tied them together, I think, is using technology to solve a business problem. And so while they're not all technology companies, they've all had some sort of a technology component. And for that reason, a lot of times people think I'm a tech guy. And that's not my background at all. I mean, it's been years and years and years. You'd laugh if I told you, what I coded in years ago. But
Well, now you got to tell us.
Well, it's basic or some early C before object oriented really existed. So it's been a long, long time.
Okay.
And so not really technical, but understanding technology enough to know when we're able to use it to solve a problem. And so I think that's really been the key is, finding ways to automate processes or to solve a problem of things that are being done manually or not done well, and really solve a business need. I think that's really been the key is finding a business need that is really there that needs solving.
So you're the idea guy.
Oh, without a doubt. Yes. I'm not the doer. I'm the guy that comes up with the ideas and finds really smart people and says, hey, I've got this crazy thing. Can we do this? And I've been fortunate enough to find people that were crazy enough to say yes and follow.
That's interesting. So, that obviously leads to the question of, where do your ideas come from? But I want to preempt that because I have a feeling that it's a little more nuanced than that. My question to you is, when did your ideas become built off your experience versus your passion? Or is that the case?
I think some of both. I think they're definitely built out of passion because I have ideas all the time. And it's not that I pursue every one of those. You just find a problem that could be solved. You go, yeah, that would be great. But that's not something I'm going to pursue because it isn't a passion. So some of it is experience and just seeing that there's a need and yeah, I could do that. But then it's taking a step back and looking at that, am I passionate about it? Am I the right person to solve it? I may have some ideas, but do I have the right ideas? Do I have the right experience to do that? So I think it really is a blend of experience and passion. But
Okay.
everything that I've done that has succeeded has really come, from the combination of those two. I have the experience and I have the passion. There have been some things that I've tried and failed where I had the experience, but I wasn't passionate about it. It was just for the dollars. And I think that's one of the reasons that some of those things failed is because there wasn't the passion behind it. And if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you absolutely have to be passionate about what you do.
Well, I would certainly agree with that because the way that you can throw sales pitches at people all day long, but they're going to see through it if you don't believe in the product or the service.
Right.
When I first got into this industry, this was before command prompt existed. What I saw was, the beginning of the internet as a consumer resource. And I actually founded the internet or the internet service provider department for a company that is the oldest and largest private ISP in Portland to this day. And it was purely through one was that gut instinct of this is going to be something. And two, understanding enough about the technology and the business behind it to have a passion for it, why it was good, how we could convince people to spend money on it, those types of things.
That makes sense.
So we little bit of where your ideas come from, obviously from passion, from experience, but you said something that was interesting to me is that not all your companies have been tech or in tech.
Yes.
That for myself is my experience is different than that, and that all of my ideas have been driven very straightforward within tech itself, and frankly, until just very recently. What are these different passions that caused you to go left or right, and how do they intermingle?
Sure. Well, one example is what I did an MBA a number of years ago, and like I said, I've been entrepreneurial for years and done a lot of different things. And one of the things that I've done quite a bit was real estate investing, and doing that before it was cool and on TV and that kind of thing. And sitting in an MBA class, and was really kind of frustrated about the time it was taking to close mortgages. I've got deals to do, and it's just taking forever to do this. And I happened to be in class with somebody who worked for a large broker and in the sales world. And his big frustration was he was losing deals and losing money, losing commission because the company couldn't close loans fast enough. And so, this really came out of a passion of really somewhat selfish. And, I want to get deals done for me, but there's a lot of other people out there as well. I mean, he's losing deals. There are people that are not able to buy homes because there's no sense of urgency on the side of the broker in getting the loans closed. And so what we did is really put our heads together, two completely different sides of the fence, and, figured out, how can we solve this? How can we, remove the bottlenecks? And then who are we going to sell this to? How are we going to, go to market? And so really coming up with a technology solution, and that was part of it. But it really came with going out and talking to, how are we going to get clients? And so really solving that problem. And so we went out to regional banks and credit unions and other financial institutions that were smaller. And most of them really had no mortgage presence at all. Some of them had a very small thing, and they may have 6 or 8 different loan programs that they could offer. So in talking to them, just kind of putting together a real brief slide deck and saying, if we did this, we're just students, and if this was real, what would you want to see in it? And so getting client feedback of how would this work? How could we serve them? How could we serve the population as well in bringing this together? And so they gave us some really good feedback. So we went and built a technology solution that aggregated about 30,000 different loan programs, so that you could put in the information for a borrower and what do they want to do? Is it cash out? Is it lower payments? Is it lower interest rate? Is it, what are their goals? And so it would go out and search all of those and bring back the top 5 and present the rep the top 2 to present to them. And so we're able to go back out to the same audience that we polled originally and said, if this existed, what would you want? And we're able to go back out to them and say, this does exist now, and it's exactly what you want. So that the technology component allowed us to do that and really serve customers really, really well, serve our clients, being the banks who are providing the leads, really well, and everybody won. And so we're able to do that and take something that was taking 90 to 120 days to close and bring that down again through technology to where we were closing loans inside 20 days. And so just a really, really big difference in just what that experience was like, but kind of starting at the end with, what is it that would be the perfect scenario? And, being in my shoes, I knew what I wanted as a consumer. And then, going out to the partners and saying, what would a perfect world look like to you? And we couldn't start there. But where we started was, in the beginning, and we built the first component and rolled that out. So, I mean, just like you would expect, MVP. But what we really had a design in mind of where we wanted to take it. And so that was, just being able to share that with the partners. We're able to get traction very quickly, get leads and move things through the process and really create as close to that perfect world as I think we could get at the time.
Through that whole thing, I kind of latched on to something that you didn't specifically say, but it's something you specifically did. And what that is, and this would be an advice for me to any startup in the world, would be go to the people that are going to be your clients and understand the problem you're trying to solve.
Absolutely. In their words.
Exactly. Because so many companies nowadays, and I'm sure this is since the beginning of time, but they sit there, they had 3 martinis and a brilliant idea. It's brilliant. And I admit it's a brilliant idea. It's absolutely a fascinating idea, and they run with it, and they actually convince people to invest in this brilliant idea, and they build
Right.
out this MVP for this brilliant idea, and then they can't get clients.
Right.
And you can't get clients. Why? You didn't ask what problem you're solving.
Right.
And if you can't answer what problem you're solving, or worse, you're solving a problem without talking to people that actually suffer from it, how can you actually solve it?
Right. I actually wrote about that in my book, Small Fish, Big Pond, and really focused in quite a bit on that. So it's really understanding the problem. And it doesn't matter what we think it is, or what we think a solution is, or what we think a good idea is. And that's really hard to take as an entrepreneur, but our opinion doesn't matter a bit. The only opinion that matters is the one that your ideal clients have. And so it's what they think that drives everything. And so if you're not getting feedback from them, you could create what you think is the greatest thing in the world, and it won't resonate with them because it's not, it didn't come from them. They didn't validate the idea. They don't see value in it. And so it goes nowhere.
No, that's exactly right. Now, I mean, obviously, in this first venture with the mortgage situation, anyone who's bought a house knows that, especially if you lived through 2008, right? I remember when all I had to do was state my income, and I had a
Right.
mortgage, right?
If
And
you had
then
a
after,
pulse.
yeah, if I had a pulse, I got a mortgage. And then after 2008, I mean, they wanted DNA, right? And so anything that we can do to streamline that a bit, I think is good. But how did the other ones come about? Like, how do you, I mean, is it just through your experiences? You're walking through your day, you go get your latte, and you see someone at the table, and you're like, hey, I think X. I mean, how is it that these ideas are cropping up that give you the passion to build a company? Because as someone who's been running the same company for 25 years, mainly because I like stability, and my last job I got fired from. Um, I don't, the idea of just launching yet another venture is a little bit daunting.
Sure. I think some of it is personality, and just always looking for opportunities, and seeing places where you can make the world better. I think maybe that's just part of the entrepreneurial mentality of just the radar is always up. So sometimes it is seeing a problem, and hey, we could fix that. And I think that there may be a business behind it as well, because there are lots of problems out there that could be fixed. Some of them are not profitable. We had one where we really put together a great solution. I mean, one of the big problems that we see in healthcare, we're spend a lot of time in that space now on the patient side, but it's providers getting paid. And so how do we streamline that? How do we make the insurance process, better? And we really sketched out exactly what would be fantastic, went out to validate the idea. And some of the people that looked at it like, this is fantastic. This is exactly what we need. There's one problem, is you're going to have to sell this to the insurance companies, and they don't want to speed up this process. And so we had to take a step back and go, oh, so we're solving a problem that they don't really want to solve, and they're the ones that are going to pay for it. So it's one of those things of validating the idea and making sure that you're pitching to the right audience. You're solving a problem that needs to be solved.
It's actually interesting that you bring up healthcare, because we're also in the healthcare space on multiple levels. Not to mention, you and I both as a customer of healthcare.
Yes.
And I think for me, the most frustrating part, it's not the paperwork. It's not the authorizations. It's not the co-pays or the co-insurance or anything like, or even the deductibles. I think for me, the most difficult part is the obfuscation.
Yes.
Right. It's all billed in a random, it's not random, but to a normal person, a random code that doesn't mean anything. They served you 4 aspirin, and that might be like CP 942.
Right.
And then you wonder why 4 aspirin costs $750.
Right.
Right. And that obfuscation. I mean, the two things in my mind, without going down this path too far, that could greatly increase the value of healthcare to the U.S. citizen. One would be actual competition, which we don't actually have. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that in many states, in order to build a hospital, you have to go through a government committee. You just can't build a clinic, even if
Right.
you have qualified people. So artificial demand is created, which increases prices, or I should say, artificial constraint and supply. And then, of course, transparency. I mean, everybody should know what's going on with their health. But not getting too busy on that. How do you build your technical teams? Because this is something that is actually a particular passion of mine. I started with technical teams when it was okay to be a jerk, right? Because you were technical, so you were allowed to be a jerk because nobody knew what you were doing anyway, so they had to keep you
Right.
around. And nowadays, we're in an environment where you got to be nice, you got to be professional, and getting technical people to understand the value of leadership, to understand the value of professional development, to understand those types of things. How do you find those people and how do you build them out?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really look for is somebody who is more than technical. So they have great technical skills, but they want more than that. And so that's one of the things that they could go to any sort of role and get into a technical role, but they're looking for more. They want more out of life. They want to contribute more. They've got more to give than just technology. And I think so part of it is really searching out and looking for those types of people, and that's worked really, really well because they've got great technical skills, but they have and want to give so much more, whether that's leadership or mentoring other developers, or have ideas for the product, additional solutions, or are not afraid to go engage clients.
That's interesting. So, but doesn't that produce a limited pool? And what I mean by that is certainly it's you can hire a consultant or you can hire an engineer that actually does have quite a bit of people skills, has charisma, has leadership knowledge, and how to convince a client or a vendor or whatever to take a left turn and take that risk. But doesn't that leave a hole where, say, the savant belongs, or the neurodivergent person belongs, that has a truly particular talent, but you're not going to be able to make them necessarily part of the team?
Yes. And the two things there. One is, yes, it does reduce the talent pool. And I think that's okay, because the alternative is just let anybody in. And I think one of the key things to do is really consciously build a culture. And that does limit the talent pool as well. And so making sure that people are aligned with the culture. And that's not to say that every technical person in the organization is somebody that we can put up in front of clients and is well spoken and is all those things. I think key leaders absolutely should be. And those are really the first hires, because we're building teams around those people. We certainly have people that you would want to put in a back room and just slide a pizza under the door, and they never talk to anybody. And just because that's their personality, that's what they want to do, and that they're really good at that. So it does take a blend of talent for sure. But I think in those first key hires, making sure that you have what you want to build a culture around, so you're hiring for fit, not just for talent.
All right. As I warned you at the beginning of this is a conversation.
Sure.
Sometimes we're going to go left, or sometimes we're going to go right. But I need to call you out. Pineapple on pizza or not?
Well, I have to say no. Fruit on pizza is that's kind of a problem. I'll eat pineapple, I'll eat pizza, but there's some things that just should not go together. Pineapple's supposed to be cold, not hot.
I agree with you 100%. I'm a big fan of either, say, a Greek style pizza where you're really eating a Greek salad on dough, white sauce, or I want the classic Italian experience where I've got pepperoni and cheese and
There you
basil
go.
and good stuff.
Right on.
There. All right, so your technical teams, do they follow you? I mean, that's I know that a lot of serial entrepreneurs, a lot of times it's like, yep, I'm bringing in Dave from over here and I'm bringing on John from over here, and we're going to build this thing. And we've worked together before, and we're your rock stars. Is that something that you practice, or?
Occasionally. I think one of the marks when I leave a company, I want to make sure that I leave it better, that it continues and does better without me than it did with me. And that sounds really strange coming from an entrepreneur. I think some people think, that they want the company to collapse without them. And I look at it a little bit differently. I think that's part of what I consider success is if they can continue on and do even better after I'm gone, I've done my job. And so a lot of times it's not bringing people along with me for a couple of reasons. One is because they're doing really well where they're at. They've built a culture, they love where they are, and they can continue on in leadership there and grow. The second is new ventures are risky. And so it's really difficult for me to take somebody out of something that they like. And they have volunteered multiple times. And there have been times where I've said yes. There have been more times where I've said no, stay where you are. Just because, it's different for me taking the risk versus different than asking somebody else and their family to take that same risk. So, a lot of times the teams that I'm building are new, and there may be one or two people that join, down the road, but it's rare to go back and take somebody from a company that I've exited and bring them into the new one.
You said something there that really speaks to me. You said that you want to leave the business better than it was. There's a marker of where it's time for you to move on. And you said that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that don't want the company to be able to succeed without them.
Right.
And I find that a remarkable insecurity. To me, the marker of success, and something that in my own company, I have worked very hard for, especially over the last decade, is that you build something that survives you.
Yes.
I mean, if tomorrow I accidentally take a left and go off the Grand Canyon in my school bus, I want my company to be able to continue. Right. And
right.
The school bus remark is because I had mentioned that there were other things that I've thought about in recent times. And one of the things I do in my spare time is I convert school buses into RVs.
I love that.
And that's where that comes from. In fact, we travel quite a bit in hours. We're probably 50%, half time we're in that versus, at the office or at home.
That's great.
But seriously, I mean, if you're building something, I think that this applies truly across the board. If you're building something that you don't want to succeed without you, you're building it for the wrong reasons. You're building it because you're making it all about yourself. And
right.
It's going to be impossible to build a proper, healthy, organic, positive culture in what you're building by doing that. Okay, so I also find it interesting that you don't necessarily bring people with you because that means you're restarting from scratch each time. I have lots of contacts at, VMware, former Pivotal, Microsoft, Amazon, things like that. So I'm constantly watching where I'll see a manager jump from one organization to another. And then once that manager is solidified within their role in the new organization, their peers or their underlings will suddenly just move there too, because that's the type of manager they are. They want to work with that manager.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if that's a success or failure. I mean, on one end, it could be a success for that manager because he has a loyal, trusted team that follows them. But on the other hand, it seems like it might be a failure of that manager before they left the previous organization to create an environment where their team felt like they could thrive without him or her.
Right. Why not take one of those people and put them into that role? And that's not always possible. But I think a lot of cases you have influence on who's going to take your position. So why not promote one of them to continue on and move forward? Why do they have to jump an organization, to move up?
No, agreed 100%. So, when do you know when it's time to exit? I mean, that's a really ethereal concept because you could be being successful, but not all the markers are quite there. How do you know? How are you comfortable saying we have built this to the point where as long as people continue with what they're doing, it is sustainable?
I don't know that you ever really know if it's the right time or not. There are opportunities to exit, and there have been times where I've taken that and looked back and said, yes, the timing was perfect. There have been times where I've looked back and said, yeah, I wish I'd waited longer. And there are times where, I've gone too long. But I think that there's a point where bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. And so you decide that, this is a good place to go. The company's in a good position, and you have leadership in place that can continue on, or there's some sort of a succession plan. So I think that's really important in looking at a partner, an acquisition partner, that there's some sort of a plan. Because we've had companies that wanted to buy, other ventures in the past, and you ask them, well, what are you going to do with it? What's the plan? They have no idea. And so, I look at that and I go, well, it's definitely, it may or may not be time, but you're not the one. So I think finding the one is probably as or more important than the time. The second measure, I think, is, what does it do to the team? I've seen way too many times where, the people at the top make money and move on and, do really well. And it's to the detriment of many of the team members. And so I think, an exit like that is not a good opportunity. We had a chance to do that a couple of years ago, and it was not going to be good for the team. And so, I had to say no. And so I think it's really that balance of, not only is it time for the business, but is there the right plan in place? Do we have the right people in place? Is it going to continue on and do well? And is there a plan that's going to be good for the people, rather than, just selling revenue, having somebody come in, gut the company, get rid of the people. And now, what good was it?
Actually, I want to touch on that a little bit, because it's something that has been percolating in my, blogosphere. Someday I'll write it. And that is companies that only grow through acquisition. There are a lot of companies out there now, and in some ways, a lot of startups where, their goal is not to produce a productive product, not to build people, not to make life better, but to get acquired. That's my goal. My goal is to get acquired. And not only, and I'm just going to be, I'm a fan of accepting different points of view, and I'm a fan of the fact that my point of view is usually right. But
aren't we all?
Aren't we all? That is exactly right. But I do think that society as a whole would benefit from everybody taking a step back and understanding that fundamentally it's people first.
It is.
Right. And what are your thoughts on, and we don't need to say who they are, because some of them are very big, but there's a lot that aren't very big. They're in your 250 to your 500 million a year range, where they don't innovate. They just basically build up a war chest and buy the next smallest player, and that's how they continue their market prominence.
Right.
I say prominence, not dominance, because there's no real dominance if you have no competition, right? It's just, no real prominence if there's no competition. So what are your thoughts there? What about those companies? What would be your advice to the leaders of those companies?
Well, I think it's really what you said. It's people first, and in different company cultures. There are certainly, companies and their culture is scorched earth. It's grow revenue and at any cost. So it's not about the people, it's about the numbers. And that is a strategy. It's certainly not my strategy. And it's one that maybe makes some money for investors, but long-term, what is the benefit, or what is the damage? But I think, these are real people, these are real lives. And, that kind of a philosophy is really damaging to the entire industry. So I think acquisitions can be really, really good if they're done well. And there are times in acquisition where there's duplication and you're reducing headcount, and some of that is probably needed. Some of it is unfortunate. But it's really thinking about, how that's done. And, is it a people first thing, or is it a money first thing? And I think what happens is, those companies, it may work for a while, but then what happens is, because that culture becomes toxic, or, the people don't resonate with that. And so it's going to be much harder for them to recruit, retain talent. And they'll probably always be a revolving door, but they lose a lot of traction in that by turning over people so often that they don't have the longevity a company that's really building for value and taking care of their people. But it really is just a difference in corporate philosophy, in management philosophy.
Well, I would agree that it's certainly a difference, but um, I think to a certain point, and especially over the past few years, there's a lot of statement toward uh, all opinions are valid. We should find value in the opinion, even if we don't agree with all of it. Those types of things. But I do think that there is strategy that, let's say, it can be successful because sure, it's making money, but it's also to the long-term detriment of society.
Right.
And to me, it's okay to call that out. It's okay to say, look, I appreciate that you just bought my company, and I appreciate you also bought my only competitor or my nearest competitor. But what you've actually done is you have reduced competition in the market to create a an art, a monopoly. And then these companies will say, well, we're not a monopoly. I mean, there's this company over here and there's that company
Right.
over there. But here's the problem. It's always the same half a dozen companies.
Sure.
So you are creating a monopoly amongst basically a golf course handshake agreement that your half a dozen companies are going to be the ones that are in charge.
And that's
Right.
hard to break into. It's hard to unseat those when they have so much money that they can buy whatever they want.
Well, certainly. I mean, right. I mean, and frankly, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they're not stupid companies. Every one of these larger companies offer, best in class benefits. They offer,
Right.
excellent pay. A lot of them offer ridiculous, luxuries. Chefs on, or before the pandemic, chefs on staff, that type of thing.
Right.
So it's not that they necessarily mistreat their people, but when you take it into a bigger view, it really, I think it constrains the progress of society itself. And for someone like yourself, who is a serial entrepreneur, one of the things that they're doing to you, I would think, and I see it too, especially in the world that I'm in, is that they are removing, or at least greatly reducing, the talent pool and making it very difficult to compete, even on the most minimal level, even if you don't actually directly compete with them, because they bought up all the people.
And that happens a lot. And I think, some of that gets old as well. So, people get into those companies and they find out that it's not all it's cracked up to be. From the outside looking in, they get in and find out it's not great, or that they want more. And so I think that gives opportunities in recruiting, that we can really pitch value, that we're doing something. They can be a part of something, bigger than themselves, versus, just be a cog in a wheel at a big organization. So they can really have an opportunity to come in and make an impact. So some of it is income, some of it is impact. And so I think, really building and selling your vision and your core values are super important in the acquisition and hiring process, and retention as well. That's
No,
why
I
people
would.
stay.
That's culture is a big part of it now. I mean, I
Yes.
think that there was a period of time, especially through the late 90s to the mid 2000s, where it really wasn't about culture. It was, am I building a cool widget and can I make good money at it?
Right.
And now it's coming back around to where culture matters, which I think is important. I want to move on to another topic here, but I do want to ask one question first.
Sure.
There's been this movement amongst non-software or non-technical companies. Now, technology is a part of every company at this point. It doesn't matter if you're building, in fact, technology is actually a very big part of, say, a ball bearing manufacturer, because of tolerances and all that type of stuff. But I've heard this many, many times over the last couple of years amongst clients who have long been established, new clients that are trying new ventures or deploying new solutions to problems. And it's a big one in new product companies. And the product may be ethereal, or I should say, it may be software, or it may be physical, a microwave or a shoe. But it comes across as this: and they will say, we are not a shoe company. We are a software company.
Right.
Now, I have my opinion of this, and if you've listened to any of my other podcasts, my listeners know what this is, but I'm kind of curious about your opinion and the pros and cons of that line of thinking.
Yeah, I think that you can call yourself anything, but people really know what you are, and will define you. So it's one thing to go out there and just say, hey, we're not this, we're that. But I think just calling it like it is, what is it that you do? And technology is definitely a part of what it is. But to say that a software company or a shoe company is a software company doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that's one of the things that maybe doesn't resonate with people. And, does that make your brand more or less trustworthy?
Well, that's a good point. And, I would argue that it's kind of a failure of leadership, because leadership is supposed to provide vision. And if your vision is to be a software company, then you're going to fail at making shoes.
Right.
Okay. Well, that was a little easier than I expected.
Well, yeah. An example of this is the dental insurance. There's a product that they're pushing now, and it is a toothbrush that it's an electronic toothbrush with Bluetooth. How about that? That communicates with your phone. And so you get discounts for, consistently brushing and these kinds of things. And so they've put all this technology into it and have this big concept. And so you get discounts for this. But the problem is it has got to be one of the crappiest toothbrushes I've ever had. And so it's like you had one job. And if you're going to be a toothbrush manufacturer, then do that and make it really, really good. And putting all this other stuff and technology into something that's garbage is kind of pointless. And so I think that we can do that and fool ourselves in thinking that, well, I'm building something really, really cool. But the core thing that we need, the core benefit we provide, it doesn't get there. And it doesn't matter what the technology is behind it. It's really building the core product so it solves the problem. It fills the need.
I don't know why I'm surprised that you just said that this product exists, but I am a little bit surprised.
And I thought it was a crazy concept. I thought it was made up at first.
Yeah. Well, in my mind, you don't even, if you're going to take that approach, you don't even build the toothbrush, right? You build the device that you put whatever your favorite toothbrush is in, right? And then what you built is basically the sensor so that you can brush your teeth with any toothbrush that works for you. And then, sure, if you want to connect to your phone, why in the Lord's name of all that is holy you would want to do that? I don't know.
I have no idea. No. I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous.
Well, insurance companies recently did something similar where now if you go to Progressive or you go to State Farm or whatever, you can plug this little device into your car's computer and it tracks how you drive, and you get discounts if you drive well.
There are apps that do that as well.
Yeah. And I kind of get that idea. Actually, I really, from a business perspective, I get it, because that means I, who have a clean record, and that's an earned thing, by the way. I didn't have a clean record all through my 20s. Now that I drive the speed limit, now that I take turns at the correct speed, now that I don't, slam on my brakes as often, that I don't pay as much in insurance. But on the other hand, there is so much data that you're giving to these companies.
Right.
And there's a real question about privacy that I think a lot of people don't get when it comes to that. Okay. So what you said, you're in the beginning of this, you're CEO of Intelligent Contacts.
Right.
And you're CEO of Champion Leadership Group.
Correct.
Now I'm going to say something, and I mean no disrespect whatsoever, but I think even you would agree that Champion Leadership Group sounds a little bit like multi-level marketing.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and it sounds like something that you would like, almost like you're selling seminars on how to make money in the stock market. And I don't mean that, honestly, don't mean any disrespect. Because
sure.
I know nothing of what this is. And I'm going to give you a chance to explain. It's when I read it, Champion Leadership Group, I'm like, for $29.99, you can buy my book and go to my seminar, and I'll teach you how to make money in the stock market. Here's a hint, folks: don't trade stocks. Put it in a S&P 500 fund and leave it alone. That being said, so talk to us a little bit. What is Champion Leadership Group?
Sure. Well, it is a group specifically for B2B SaaS founders to grow and scale their business. It's a growth accelerator. And so it's designed to help grow in really two different phases. One is what we call crossing Death Valley, and that's scaling from 1 to 10 million. 1 in 40,000 companies makes that journey successfully, and so many die along the way. And so we want to one, change that and make it to where it's much easier, and you've got support and tools along the way. And then the second phase is really 10 to 100 million. And so we've got two distinct groups within that.
Okay, so is like a mentoring, peer networking kind of thing, or?
It is. It really has three components. It is mentor based for sure, because mentoring is huge. It's knowledge focused, so we've got a lot of content and training for areas that you need to increase your skills in. A company will rarely outgrow its leader, so I think it's really important as leaders that we continue to grow and expand as well, so that we don't become the bottleneck for our company. And the third is that we're peer supported. So the old saying that it's lonely at the top. Well, the reason that is because it's lonely at the top. And it really is. I mean, being an entrepreneur is tough, especially if you don't have a board, you don't have a lot of the support network that you would in a bigger organization. And so we're able to provide that through peer support as well as mentoring, so that you're not on the journey alone, that you're with other people that are doing the same things that you're doing. You're with people who are a little bit ahead of you. You're with people who are a little bit behind you that you can help as well. Because it's not just about what we're building, but about what we can build together and how we can help each other move forward.
You said something there that I think it's highly relevant and really rolls into basically our last topic here, which is professional development. You said that an organization will rarely outgrow its leader.
Right.
And therefore the leader must continue to grow. And that means professional development. A leader needs to be able to let go of their ego, needs to be able to understand they don't know everything, needs to be able to improve themselves, which can be very difficult for someone who is successful.
Yes.
There's that whole old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But here's the problem. It's not about fixing something broken. It's about improving the parts that aren't as sharp as they can be.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk a little bit about professional development here. You build companies, but you also act as a coach.
Yes.
Right? That's this Champion Leadership Group. And actually, I'm hoping I'm going to learn something here from you, because I have my own ideas on this.
Okay.
And I'm sure that they're not as, let's say, well-rounded as yours, because I am fairly focused in what I'm doing in terms of mentorship, and mostly it's around my own team and helping build them up. But in building companies and when you're acting as a coach, how does this mentorship play into your business?
Into my business or into
yeah. Well, what role does mentorship play in this
for
side
me?
Of your business? Yeah.
I think mentorship is really why I am where I am. I think there are two ways to learn. One is mentors and the other is mistakes. And I've done the mistakes route way too many times. And so it's really having mentors that can help avoid those things, that can bring additional perspective or outside perspective, and they see things that you don't. It's really easy to look at a company or look at somebody else, or you think about looking at somebody's resume or profile, and you're like, you can give them input, but then you look at your own and you struggle with that. I don't know if anybody has ever struggled with writing a resume. It's really difficult. And so, it's really difficult to diagnose things in my own company because I'm so close to it. But when I have that outside perspective, when I have trusted network that can help me do that and see my blind spots. The reason they're called blind spots is because I can't see them. And I think that's really helpful to have that perspective to help other people show you your blind spots. And so that you're able to do something about those, and you're not blind anymore. And as soon as you fix those, what you'll find out is you've got other things that you couldn't see as well. And so when we do that together, it makes such a big difference. And that's one of the ways that we grow, is having that perspective.
It's funny you bring that up, because it happens often. I will have associates and peers, and they'll call me and think, "Hey, JD, had this incident, had this experience. I want to run something by you. What do you think?"
Yes.
And I'm happy to provide the time because I do have 30 years of experience, and I like to see people be successful. But it'll be funny because I will then bring that experience back to the table, and I'll be talking to, say, our COO or something, and our COO will like have a light bulb go off. It's like, we have this similar problem over here.
Yes.
And my response is, "What are you talking about? No, we're fine." And she'd be like, "No, we really do. I think we need
Yes,
to look
that's
at
exactly
this."
right.
And I think that's important. I think that especially in your leadership team. I mean, it's important across all teams, but especially in the leadership team, it's important to reach out and just be able to talk to someone who is dealing with the same stuff, right? I
Yes.
mean, running a business isn't that different. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. We all have our human resource issues. We all have our profitability issues, our productivity issues, our cultural differences, how to deal with the fact that we employ evangelicals and raging liberals, right? And how do we
Yes.
bring all that together so that the melting pot is positive? And being able to talk with others, I think it's really a sign of success within yourself, especially if you can listen.
That's what I love about our group, and particularly being in the SaaS space, because we're all working on software, and a lot of it is specifically geared toward businesses, B2B SaaS, but a lot of different industries, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different inputs. So people see the world differently. And I think when we have those conversations, when we're willing to be open and talk about those things, we can walk away different. We can see the world differently by talking with somebody else who sees that, and we can have a shift in our perspective. And that makes us better as a company. It makes us better leaders, and it grows our business at the same time.
So, for my own, in my experience, it took me a long time to get to a point where I was willing to mentor others. And it's only been for about the past decade. But I came about because I reached a certain level of success where I felt like I didn't have to directly focus on the survival of my own company. And I was able to say there were a lot, I was able to come to this realization that there were a lot of people along the way that at just the right time, somehow they provided some piece of advice that allowed me to move through a blockade that was, something that was blocking me or my company from succeeding.
Without a doubt.
Is there any particular membership moment in your own career path where you really like you hold on to it as a something that is, it's the looking glass on your desk that when you're starting to get frustrated, that you look at it and it says, okay, take a step back, remember what so and so said?
I think there are a lot of those moments, and sometimes it could be something that I'd heard before, but I wasn't ready to hear, and so it's in that moment that it comes back, or you hear it again, and it hits you differently because you're in a different place, ready to hear that. And so there are definitely a lot of those moments that I think back, and some of those were there all the time. Some of them were, as you said, I mean, it's just at the right time, and whether it's deciding, should I do this, should I give up, frustrated. Should I just get rid of everybody and do this myself? Because I think we have those days sometimes where is this even worth it? And so it's in those moments, it's those relationships. It's having somebody, and I love that somebody can pick up the phone and call you and have those kinds of conversations. That's missing for so many entrepreneurs out there. They're just by themselves. But I think it's a super important part of growing a business and just keeping your sanity as an entrepreneur, because it is a challenging journey.
Do you think there's anyone that doesn't need a mentor?
No, I think we all do. And whatever level that is at, what I think there's two pieces to the puzzle, and one is looking for somebody that's a little bit ahead of you, that can provide that wisdom and guidance and insight and sees things that you don't see yet. And the other part to that is looking for somebody that's a little bit behind you, and that you can go and you can be that same voice for them. That's one of the reasons that I started Champion Leadership Group, is I really wanted to be the mentor that I wish I'd had in the early days. So I think it's really important finding those people that you can help and bring forward. And in doing that, one of my favorite quotes, Woodrow Wilson, president that's not often quoted, he said, "I use all the brains I have and all the brains I can borrow." And that's something that stuck with me for a long time. That I definitely want to use all the brains that I have, but also be able to borrow other people's brains, because what I've done and where I am, 100% of my brain is pretty good, but 1 or 2% of 100 other people or 1,000 other people is so much better. And having that additional perspective and them seeing things that I don't, it moves me so much further than just trying to focus in and make myself 1% better.
You said something there. You said, I started Championship Leadership Group to be able to provide mentorship to those that I wish I would have had when I was younger.
Yes.
My question to you is, would you have listened when you were 25, when you were 26?
Actually, yes. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I am where I am, is because I did listen, and because other people invested in me, not because I could deliver a return for them or because they were going to get anything out of it, but because I was there, because I was willing, because they had the ability to do that. And so, not necessarily, I'm not talking about financially invest. I'm talking about investing their time and attention and their knowledge. And so, being that sounding board for me. And so there were definitely times where I did listen. And just like I said, there are a lot of ways to learn mentors and mistakes. And there are a lot of times where I didn't listen, and I got to learn from the mistake route. So it's being there, and not everybody will listen. And I understand that, but it doesn't mean that just because you can't save all the starfish doesn't mean that you can't make a difference for the next one that you come across, and get it back in the water and take the next step and the next step and the next step.
It's interesting you bring that up. We have been working off and on with a nonprofit called Tag Northwest, and what this nonprofit does is it's all about bringing people into STEM and mentoring them through a project to help them move forward, as well as helping other nonprofits with their technology needs through that. So for example, you may bring in a student or at least a young person and say, you're going to build a website that does X for this web nonprofit. And because you built this website and we have a mentor to help you build this website, you are now going to have a skill that will allow you to actually move forward within a STEM career. Unlike, say, these boot camps that don't actually do that, right? This is hands-on with younger people. And as we're sitting there in an initial meeting, I asked them, I said, so in my experience, the younger generation, I'm not talking about 35, I'm talking your 22, 23-year-olds and younger, they don't want to put the effort in. And I'm not saying all of them by any stretch, but a lot of them feel that it should just come to them, and there's a minimum amount of effort that they should have to put forth. How do you deal with that? And the gentleman looked at me and he laughed a little bit. He took a drink and he smiled and he said, well, the ones that don't want to succeed just don't show up. And I'm curious about your experience with that. Since you've got this mentor, this leadership group, do you think that those of us that succeed, and obviously there's different levels of success. There's plenty of people that go through their lives, have a nice career, make a decent living, take care of their families, retire, so on and so forth. But to reach that next level, would you say that things like professional development, leadership mentoring, things that are a little bit out of the wheelhouse of, let's say an accountant, you can be a good accountant without being a good leader?
Sure.
But to be a great accountant, do you, or other thing, are those things required? Is there a certain level? I mean, when you think about leaders of industry, like say Warren Buffett, right?
Right.
When you think about these levels of people, to get there? Are those requirements there? Do people really understand that? Have you run into people over the last few years that they've kind of forgotten that anything worthwhile takes effort?
Sometimes, and I think, is it generational? Maybe a little bit, but I think that there is certainly a sense of entitlement, especially now that, success should be easy, and why should I have to work for it? It seems like, overnight success, and what they see is just at the very top of the iceberg, and they don't see all the hard work, the 20 years of grinding, to become that, quote unquote overnight success. But that's the way it's portrayed in the media, is that, success was instant.
And that's true. I mean, I can go on for hours about the media and how it basically just grooms our younger people. So with success takes hard work. We both agree with
Yes.
that. And that work a lot of times is invisible. People, like you said, don't see the 20 years. Well, command prompts have been around for 25 years, and I wouldn't have considered this a actual success until the last 10. Right? There was a solid 15 years where my nose was the grindstone with all the other team members, just trying to make sure everybody got fed.
Yeah.
And you got to push boundaries when you do that. Test
Yes.
boundaries. What do you talk to me a little bit about that? Talk to me about pushing boundaries, testing boundaries, and knowing where that limit is.
I think that's one of the reasons that I've been successful is pushing those boundaries. And some of it has been intentional. Some of it has been just not knowing the way that you're not supposed to do things. Not understanding that there's supposed to be a limitation, or that that's not how we do it, or that there's some sort of norm. So I think just pushing those boundaries and trying different things, and saying, well, why not? Or just doing something, and it works because it worked in another industry, but being able to take that and bring it to a different industry that has never seen that before, never, that's not how things are done. So I think that there's a real benefit in not knowing how things are supposed to be done in pushing those boundaries.
I think I would definitely agree with that. All right. Well, as we close out, I got one last question for you. If you had a crystal ball, or whatever your vision or motivation is, in the next 5, 10, 20 years, what does that look like for you? What do you have any goal, as yourself and myself, frankly, if we're talking about 20 years, are starting to go into the sunset of our lives? What are the goals, the milestones you want to reach as we get there?
Sure. I think as my career's gone on, my goals have changed a little bit from, being income goals to being more giving goals, and being, instead of, what can I do? What can I accomplish? More about impact and the legacy I leave behind. And so, I love working with entrepreneurs. And so helping them be successful, that's where I really see, long-term success, is in helping them be successful and then clone themselves. So, they're successful and they're able to help other people become successful as well. So it's not just about us or just about me, but how can we pay that forward? How can we take that and share that to the next generation to help them be more successful, or to get there quicker? The other is, kind of legacy related, similar to you. Support an organization here that's around mentoring called Dare to Serve, and so works in Title I schools, and particularly with high school students. And so they do service projects in their community, but a lot of things around that, specifically around mentoring. And so, it's one thing to have, different programs that give and meet needs. And I think that's helpful. But the one thing that they don't do is they don't change the mindset. If somebody doesn't believe that they can be successful, then why would they change? Why would they pursue that? Why would they go try and do something if it's not going to work anyway? And so, programs like Dare to Serve, and really working and mentoring kids, and showing them what is possible, helping them change the mindset of that they really can be what they want to be. If they want to be a doctor, it's pairing them up with a doctor who's willing to give their time and mentor that high school student through medical school. through the process and really understand what does that look like, because it's them seeing that there is a different world. There's a better place out there, that they can shift from the path that they're on to something different. When they change that mindset, that's where life change happens. And so I think, long term, really continuing down those two paths. One is helping change the lives of entrepreneurs, because that affects so many other people, and whether it's employees or families, and also for students and the next generation, that they really can do whatever they want to do, and helping them remove those limitations and move them from kind of the predictable path that they may be on, of nobody is in my family has graduated high school, to yes, I can do that, and I can go and I can do what I want to do, and I can chase my dreams, and I can be successful. So that's really, what does the next 20 years look like for me? It's really about life change and impact.
Well, I think that's fantastic. On our end of things, we have a life and leadership project called Intrepidus Vita, which is Latin for fearless life.
Love it.
And the whole idea around it is, and honestly, it's more focused on adults, people who are established in their careers. And it came about originally because I would talk to people in these Fortune 500 companies, and then they would suddenly find out that we have this school bus that we converted into an RV, and they were blown away by this. And then they would find out that not only do we have this school bus that was converted into an RV, I was taking the call from the South Rim of the Grand Canyon, or from the Badlands, or something like that. And the whole idea here is to remind people that we don't fit in a box. Take a risk. There's a lot of people that won't take risks. And one of the most interesting things to me is, especially if you're talking about at least the people that I run with in the technology industry, you would be amazed at how many people are afraid to camp. Right? You wouldn't think of it, but there is. And then it's not really about that. It's just about, don't be afraid to do something you're not used to doing.
Yes.
And with that, folks, this has been More Than a Refresh, a podcast about data and the people who wrangle it. Our guest today was Jeff Maines, CEO at Intelligent Contacts and CEO at Champion Leadership Group. You can find out more about Jeff at jeffmaines.com/about. Jeff, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, JD. It was a great time.